Good morning. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. I realized in editing how bad the noise was from Steve's vacuum cleaner last week. I guess I'm just so used to it that I didn't think it was that bad. But then when I was doing the editing and there were moments when he wasn't vacuuming, I thought, oops. So sorry about that. I just checked with him. He's not going to vacuum today. The other thing I figured out was where to focus, which is, I think, like dead ahead. And I just have to remember, after 5 years of looking there for some reason, that was the spot that would give me eye contact. I now have to look at the little red numbers ticking past, and it's like 44, 45. And so I don't need that kind of information. I just want to be able to just talk and not worry about the time. But so the other piece I haven't quite figured out is whether I have to look at that red spot or whether I can just look at myself. So it'll probably be a little of both until I figure out the fine tuning. Okay, so I have something fun to show you. One of the ladies in one of my 3 book clubs has taken on a new craft. She used to do, or maybe she still does, but the really tiny models that would be very intricate of a library room or a castle room or something like that, and they were little models. Anyways, I guess she probably got through everything. She's a little obsessive that way. So she's moved into something called diamond art. I think that's what she called it. Now, okay, there. That's this. It's very sparkly. And I was astonished at how sparkly this is. And I guess this is kind of paint by number, but with sparkles. And then the other one, so she gave everybody a bookmark. And I love the tassel. And then this one is one of those things that goes over the corner. And I mean, it really sparkled. When you put it flat, it really catches the light. So it doesn't catch the light quite so much here. But I have to find the right book for this because it is quite large. And I think she said that this could also be turned into coasters. But, like I said, well, if I gave this as a coaster to Steve, there'd be coffee all over it in no time flat. It would ruin it. Today, I have 2 humorous books that I'm going to talk to you about. One of them's a classic. Probably you've heard about it. And the other one, pretty interesting. I don't know whether it's going to make it into the classics of science fictions. I think it could. It's a question of a combination of marketing and buy-in. So the classic is Cold Comfort Inn by Stella Gibbons. And it's a comic classic of rural life. I had read it once before, and there's a part of me that thinks a really good actress, British actress, did a film with it, but I'm not positive. I could be mixed up with another one. And I quite often get this one mixed up with the book by We Have Always Lived in the Castle, I think it's called, by another S.J. Sheila Jackson. So I get the 2 mixed up all the time. So that's why I decided when I saw this in the used bookstore that I was going to read it again. And I really enjoyed it. I had this up beside me is a bedtime read, and it's really a good bedtime read. The chapters are they're about 5-ish, 6 pages long. It's a bit of small print though, so I don't know, maybe 20, 30 minutes of reading before bedtime. And quite often I would really, buy into it and start to read a couple of chapters. But the storyline is such that it wasn't gripping. So you didn't have to really worry about overreading. You did get to sleep. I'm just reading one right now where I have accidentally become obsessed. Instead of just reading one chapter, I'm reading more than one chapter, and I'll tell you about that when I'm finished because it's turning out to be a really good book. just in case, I shouldn't have done that. That's a teaser. It's A Bird in the House by Margaret Lawrence, but I will speak about that when I'm finished. Okay, Cold Comfort Farm is the story of Flora, who has at the age of 19, her parents are both deceased, and she's not coming into a lot of money, and but she has decided upon visiting relatives, and there are a number of relatives around the country that she could drop in on, and there's also I guess a distant cousin called Charles, who she has known since she's young, and so he's possibility. I think he's related in some way, or his mother was her, something like that. But Charles is not her game plan. She's decided that she's going to go to the relatives at Cold Comfort Farm, which is actually the name of the farm. And this is where the Starkadders have always lived. And it has passed down through the generations. And there is, the current matriarch is up in her bedroom and has her thumb on everybody because she uses the hysterics of, I'm losing my mind, I'm going mad, oh my heart, da 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 da. Don't do this, it makes me lose my mind. Don't do that, it makes me lose my mind. So everybody has just become completely terrorized by her. Flora doesn't know that going into it. She's just decided that a farm is a good place to go for the spring and the summer, and probably they're not living their lives in their best way, and she, Flora, will come in and tidy it all up. So the first chapter, or maybe the first two chapters, between all that information and arriving, I struggled a little bit because she's smug, but in a kind of cold way. I don't know, sometimes smug people are kind of warm and sort of exude heat in their smugness. She doesn't. She's just very analytical and making incredible pronouncements. And as some comedian out there once said, I don't know where she gets her shit, but she got her shit and trots off to the farm. So then the next little section was a description of the farm and the people. And I was thinking to myself, there's nothing really funny about this. This is kind of bleak. This is kind of, I hope the rest of the book isn't like this. And thought, I'll give it another chapter. And it's a good thing I did, because the setting has to be described so that you understand what she's up against. And the people, oh my goodness, they're so... they're just so submerged in dreariness and lack of hope and rage and just all these things where, one person thinks, what shall I say? It's hopeless. Sorry, it should be called Cold Hopeless Farm. And so she figures out who the key person is that she needs to help out in order that other people can go forward and she can solve their problems. So she has figured out fairly quickly what is each person's passion, and yet how it's not being realized in their lives. And so she's got quickly a game plan, and she doesn't entirely have the full spectrum of what she needs to do for each person, but she's got a pretty good sense of, where are the key stumbling blocks. And so she's very good at opening doors. She's manipulative in a way, but not in the sense of, she'd be okay as your co-worker. She'd be the kind of person who would say, I wonder if you tried this, that just might work. And if you followed their advice, you'd go, oh, that does work. Thank you very much. And so she's that kind of manipulative. So she opens the doors for everyone by getting the patriarch of the family. So matriarch is grandma. Patriarch is her son, Amos. Son-in-law, Amos. And her daughter is just completely depressed. And so Stella goes after Amos. And he is a a preacher of sorts. I'm not sure, he's not been trained in anything. He's one of those preachers that has his own opinions on what the Bible means and resurrection and death and heaven and hell and all that business. But his mission in life is to be someone bringing the word of God to anybody. And so she sets him on the path of a traveling ministry, and he's, oh, I can't leave, I don't have a truck, my mother-in-law will never let me, and so on. And so she kind of gets at him by using God. Do you think God might be disappointed if you don't actually follow your ministry? Like, what would be worse, disappointing your mother-in-law or disappointing God? So Amos, da-da-da-da. And then she just works her way through. Oh, there's the clock. Do, 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 do. That means it's 12 o'clock. So she works her way through the family, and gradually eventually there's a wedding or two, and possibly three, depending on how you read the ending of the book. The matriarch is dealt with in a really funny way. I quite enjoyed it. The daughter I thought was a little bit unsatisfactory, but her depression meant that she was off book quite often, and so we didn't really get to know her the way we got to know the other characters. There's a whole raft of tertiary characters who also have their issues that she slowly, just kind of with very little intervention, manages to help each one of these people just be a little bit happier. And then because everybody's just a little bit happier, everybody becomes exponentially more happy. And so it is humorous. It's the kind of humor that it's not like knock knock who's there kind of humor, you know. It's slightly below the surface. It's sort of satire, and in the way that satire for me quite often is, I'm thirsty, just a sec. Satire is often connected into current politics or current social events or current social justice, and you have to really know the context in order to truly understand what it is that is being poked in the ribs. So in a way it's satire, but what she's done is created a world that you can get your brain into. So by having described the farm so thoroughly and continuing to remind us what the farm is like, we understand the community, we understand the hierarchy, we understand the internal politics. So it is a successful satire. It's just sort of a little bit left of the ordinary satire. So for that, if you like satire, for sure, this is pretty funny. If you like humor that is a low pitch, this is also really, really good. If you like someone coming in who's just, sort of the Joker, if you like someone who's coming in and making commentary on that community and that hierarchy, she's sort of the way the Joker in King Lear plays the fool, I guess. So, except that Flora's never foolish. She's very astute. And so, yeah, it's a 5 out of 5 for me. One of the reasons I purchased it is I thought it would make a really good read aloud. But the first, I'm going to say 4 chapters, I think if we'd been doing it as a read aloud, I think we would have not continued. And so that's why I think it really starts to rock by chapter 5, chapter 6, I'm not sure, but that's an investment of 50 to 60 pages. Now, because I've said that, and if you go off and read that, you're going to know why the first 60 pages just take a little bit to embrace. But yeah, I think it's a great one. One of my book clubs is next year looking at different kinds of, what would you call it? Not really genres, but themes for what we might read. And one of them is the classic you should have read. So I bet a lot of people have not read this one, and I think that it would be a great book club book as well. All right, the other one is humorous in a completely different way. It is When the Moon Hits Your Eye by John Scalzi. Let me see, trying to get the glare off. Okay, well, you can see, like right off the bat, the moon has turned to cheese. And what does that mean for Earth? And is that going to be an extermination point? If the moon is cheese, is it going to still rock the tides? Is it going to still affect the sun? Is it going to still stay in its orbit? Is it going to shoot off parts of it because of, how stable is cheese? So of course nobody knows. And we encounter a huge raft of characters. Some of them come back, and some of them are just little like episodes, I guess you could say. And so we see them in their entirety. Because some people come back and some people don't. When you come across a new group of people, you're not entirely sure if they're going to repeat. Towards the ending, some of the people do repeat because there's some closure to the questions that they ask. There's a lot of scientific kinds of questions, but it's the scientific questions that you or I might ask. It's like, you might go, oh, well, if a rocket ship is going to land on cheese, is it going to sink? It would be that kind of scientific question. So it's not going to be, you're not going to be overwhelmed with science. There's a little bit of it because this is a science fiction book. Yeah, it's science fiction. So there's going to be some science for the people who appreciate the technological side of science. So there's a nice blend of the geeky, nerdy stuff and then the stuff that the average person could read. Now, if you're a science fiction fan, I don't know what you're going to think about this book, because there's sort of a plot, but there's sort of not a plot, and the world that's being built is the world right now, today. So there isn't a whole lot of outer spaceness, there isn't a whole lot of otherworldness, there's not really any aliens. The technology is not terrifically different than what we are encountering today. It's written in the 2000s, so it's a fairly new book. 2025, yeah. So it's using a lot of technology. It doesn't get into the whole AI thing too much. So we've got NASA, who has, and I think NASA has done this in real life, farmed out a lot of its technological development and astronaut development. Its companies tend to be developing that sort of thing for NASA. And so NASA is the client more than the producer of new developments in rocket science and fuel and all that sort of thing. And a lot of the astronauts are coming from the companies that are doing that kind of development for NASA. But NASA is kind of the big guy. And so they've decided that they're going to do a moon landing, and they've hired what's it called? I can't remember what it's called. The company name, anyhow, doesn't really matter. There's the owner of this company has like a lifelong wish to be on the moon. He's just your average guy. He's got a tech company himself. He's not terrifically techy. He's a really good CEO. He's built this company up. He's got his fingers in with a lot of billionaires and tech companies, and he's used his own body as the prototype for when they're doing how much weight would the average person be. So he's same weight and height and everything as astronauts. So can you see where this is going? I'm not sure how he was going to do this before the moon turned to cheese, but he sees this as an incredible opportunity. But NASA, of course, doesn't. They're like, we can't send 5 astronauts to certain death on the moon of cheese. That's there's just too many unknowns. We can't do that. So the guy Jody of the company convinces NASA, okay, well, let's just do an orbit because nobody's going to get their money unless this lunar landing module piece takes off. It has to take off, it has to land, it has to do something. So everybody agrees that money can exchange hands if this piece of machinery does this, is it called a sub-atmosphere circuit or something like that? It's not going to go to the moon. Or is it? So Jody has his little scheme, and NASA is blindsided, and of course, we've now got the problem of China and Russia, because as science and information is becoming more and more aware of what's going on, nothing can be hushed up because there's all these independent scientists and amateur scientists all over the world, and they're all coming to the same conclusions about what it means to have a cheese moon. And if the cheese is bigger than the rock moon, so because of gravity, it's sort of expanded, and then it's starting to contract in order to reach its densest mass, which means all the water in the cheese is like splurting out. There's geysers everywhere. So I can't tell you a ton more because there are so many questions. Like there's three guys in a restaurant having coffee, and they've got some philosophical conversations around it. And if there's going to be the end of the moon, what are they going to do? Are they going to go see their families? Or are they going to be? I'm sorry. If the moon shoots off a big piece of it and hits Earth, that's going to be an extermination event. So what are you going to do in the face of an extermination event? So there's conversations like that. It's just kind of funny. Has some flavor of plague, when the plague was coming in and everybody thought this was end of world, and people are like, well, okay, but I got to get the crops in, or I've got to finish washing the windows before I can worry about dying, And we might not die tomorrow, we might die in 2 years. So, what's that mean? And so there's all kinds of human questions going on. It's pretty funny. You wouldn't think that at the end of the earth would be a funny thing, but the characters that John Scalzi has written are bright and very verbally adept. Some of them are really informed scientifically, some of them aren't, and in their ignorance they can be quite probing, and so I really like it. I think this is a book that what shall I say? If it can, as I said in the beginning, if it can meet the right people and the right people promote it, I think it will go a long way in the world of science fiction, because a lot of the dystopian novels that we have are predicated on some kind of nuclear disaster or some kind of invasion disaster, and this is pre-dystopia. And there's a lot of interesting what ifs, and sometimes what if is answered by, okay, this is probably what will be the consequence of that. So I think it might be, we've all read, or a lot of us have read 1984 or Fahrenheit something or other. And, so I don't think that the moon is going to change to cheese. No, that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that some of those books were not that popular initially, and then they grew. So I think the fan base has to really develop for this book. But you want to get ahead of the curve and read it before everybody else has read it, I just go for it. I'm sure it's at a lot of libraries. I have talked about John Scalzi's other books that I've read. Starter Villain I really enjoyed, and Agent to the Stars I really enjoyed. I do not like the Old Man's War novels. I wouldn't even recommend those. That's how much I don't like them. So I'm going to continue to be a John Scalzi fan, but I'm going to take a break because that's That makes 4 books this calendar year. And yeah, I mean, maybe all of a sudden he's going to start to sound same old, same old. So I'll take a little break and just remember this one. I think it's going to. Oh, the other part I meant to mention was that this was so well written that a number of times I put the book down and I was about to say to Steve or my eldest and check in on a scientific fact, because I thought, is that right? Is that right? No, they would know, because they know physics, and they're just these people that know a lot of things about a lot of things. And so I thought, I could check in with them. And Steve was a great astronaut fan back in the 60s. And so anyways, I thought, I must check in with those guys and see. And then I thought, wait a minute, it's fiction. And then once the book was finished, I went and double checked some of the fact. I did some fact finding afterwards. But he's accurate. He's totally accurate. There's no pulling of your leg in here in any kind of way in terms of facts. Okay, I'm in the middle of reading books for book clubs. I have 3 book clubs to read for October, and so I'm just getting those off of the list and enjoying two of them. The third one I just started. I'm not so sure. You love a book club for the people, not for the books. That's my recent comment. That's my recent discovery. So I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true, and I will see you next week, hopefully with some good book club books. Bye-bye for now.